This new age will be defined by a competence and a compassion that have too long been placed at odds with one another. We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about.
Can democratic socialism work in New York City? Hey folks, Mad Cat here. Welcome to the channel where we talk about politics, faith, current events, and controversial topics. This video is not about whether or not Zohran Mamdani is a good person. It's not about whether he is genuine or phony. And it's not about whether or not New York needs reform. It clearly does. This video is about something more measurable: feasibility. In politics, intentions don't matter if you're at the mercy of a system which controls a legislator's ability to effect change. Zohran Mamdani, the charismatic young mayor-elect of New York City, ran on a very clear message. New York City is unaffordable, it is unequal, and it is rigged to benefit billionaires and the elite. Bold socialist solutions are the remedy, according to him. Rent protections, free public transit, and generally lowering the cost of living. These ideas resonate with so many New Yorkers because the pain that people are experiencing is real. Rent is absurd for most middle-class earners. Transportation is expensive. So when people hear Mamdani speak, they think, wow, someone is willing to fight. But being able to diagnose problems is not the same as governing authority. Tax the wealthy is not a prescription in an environment that is dependent on the wealthy. But that's not even the first problem. The first problem is that implementing radical change in New York City is nearly impossible in any aspect. Despite being the largest city in the country, New York City is still subordinate to New York State. That means the mayor of New York cannot unilaterally freeze rents, raise taxes on the wealthy, or make buses free without state approval. See, Albany controls rent regulation laws, major tax authority, the transit system, large chunks of housing policy. Even if Mamdani has the votes in city council to move forward with some of his intentions, Albany can simply say no, and they will. And we know this because they have before. Albany is governed by moderate Democrats with suburban interests. New York State politicians do not answer to NYC's progressive base, and they've made that clear with previous mayors. Albany blocked Bill de Blasio when he attempted rent control expansions. They blocked John Lindsay from new taxing authority for various social programs and housing investment. And they'll block Mamdani as well. The structural reality of NYC politics is that most of Mamdani's proposals are dead on arrival. New York City already operates under extreme fiscal pressure, massive pension obligations, colossal long-term debt, and aging infrastructure. The city relies heavily on the real estate market and high-income earners. These are precisely the folks Mamdani plans to target. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Wealthy people are mobile. They don't need to stay put. Mamdani, like most democratic socialists, seems to misunderstand that wealthy people didn't get wealthy by sitting around waiting for the government to take their money. They can relocate income, they can restructure assets, or they can simply leave the city. And when an exodus like that begins to take place, tax revenue plummets and borrowing costs increase. Eventually, the city will have to choose between cutting services or raising taxes further on a shrinking base. It'll be either social programs or solvency, and they'll choose solvency. If they don't, a fiscal death spiral will ensue. And we've already seen this same pattern occur in Detroit. There is no scenario where New York State officials risk that, but rent is where expectations will crash the hardest. Rent freezes sound simple. Landlords are greedy, just cap the rent. But housing is a supply system. When you cap prices without expanding supply, new construction slows because developers will bring it to a halt. Developers, by the way, are the folks who actually run New York City. If they feel they're being squeezed, they're going to remind Mamdani where the power actually is, and they're going to bring all projects to a snail's pace. Once development projects are paused, unions will become Mamdani's worst nightmare. When working folks see their livelihoods threatened, they're going to back Mamdani into a corner. Not to mention the cascading effect that it'll have. Maintenance gets delayed, small landlords exit the market, and buildings deteriorate. This has already occurred in New York City before, so this isn't baseless prediction. Realistically, the changes that Mamdani will implement regarding rent will be minimal. Partial protections and symbolic policy implementation, which helps some people but doesn't structurally change the housing market even a bit. A mayor can give speeches and inspire hope, but the machine decides what can actually be done. And if the change isn't feasible or sustainable, the powers that be will put a stop to it. See, New Yorkers don't care about theory. They care about whether the train shows up, whether the trash gets picked up, whether their rent keeps rising, whether they can get to work safely. When those don't improve or get worse, approval collapses. So what will actually happen during Mamdani's time in office? The most realistic scenario is that year one, there will be excitement and energy and symbolic action will be taken. By year 2 and 3, the fiscal pressure will kick up, and that's when the lawsuits will start and reforms will be stalled. By year 4, there will be disappointment about the failed implementation of policies, and the narrative will shift. Mamdani will leave office expressing sentiment similar to what other progressive politicians have expressed when implementation of policy has failed. I tried, but the system blocked me. And he won't be wrong, and that's part of what allows the socialist fantasy to keep momentum. It's the idea that if the circumstances were right, it would function. Or if the system wasn't preventing it, it would work. Ironically, the system prevents it because it doesn't work, not in spite of it. See, Zohran Mamdani isn't wrong about the problems. He's wrong about how to best solve the problems because his solutions have been tried and they have failed. Thanks for watching, folks. Comment, like, and subscribe for more content. Mad Cat out.